So just how strong is the Islamic State as a group, and should political leaders rethink their stance on hostage situations, and should Britain do more in its involvement in the war against Islamic State? Well, I'm joined now by Dr Alan Mendoza, the Executive Director of the right-wing foreign policy and security research think tank, the Henry Jackson Society, and Chris Nineham is one of the founder members and national officers of the Stop the War Coalition. Welcome to both of you. Dr Alan Mendoza, do you have any sympathy with the call we've heard there today from James Foley's mother, saying that we should rethink how hostages are dealt with in situations like her son's?
Well, firstly, I have to correct your description. We're not a right-wing group, we're a cross-party group. Obviously, the plight of the hostages is a very serious concern. It's quite natural for parents of the hostages to feel that way. And of course I have sympathy. The human sympathy is there, full stop. But there is a practical problem. The problem is, number one, it will increase kidnappings. If you pay ransoms for kidnappings, you will encourage more. Plus, at the same time, you are actually encouraging ISIS in its manoeuvrings and in its actions. They will get money for this, they will use that money to prosecute their own aims, and it will lead to untold suffering for thousands more. So there is a practical problem with what's being suggested.
Would you agree with that, Chris Nineham? Incredibly difficult for the families involved, of course, but do you think that the policy of no negotiations whatsoever should be stuck to?
No, not at all. I think there should be a rethink. I think anything we can do to defuse the situation rather than create confrontation is a good thing. And it may well be that these hostage situations are designed not to get the money primarily, but to actually precipitate further military action. I think we need a full 180-degree U-turn on the whole way that this issue of ISIS is being discussed and dealt with. And what we definitely don't need is more of the same, is an escalation of military intervention, because all the history, all the facts, from Afghanistan to Iraq to Libya, has shown that these foreign interventions are an absolute disaster. They spread violence, they spread hatred against the West, and they've led to a massive increase in the terrorist threat. These are the facts. This is a very serious situation, and we've got to learn lessons from the facts and from the recent past.
So, Chris Nineham, I take it you completely disagree with the conclusions of the Defence Select Committee, then, that has said today that they've talked about the UK's role as being strikingly modest and should be stepped up, rather.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you know, we need to look at the record of the war on terror, so-called, up to now. And if we look seriously at it, we find that since 2001, jihadism, terrorism has spread from a small area of Central Asia right across that region, right through the Middle East. There was no terrorism in Iraq before the invasion of that country, right across into parts of Central and Western Africa. The war on terror has been a complete failure, even in its own terms, as well as causing, of course, immense misery and suffering for millions of people. The last thing we need to do is to do more of the same. If we don't learn from history, we'll end up repeating it over and over again. And actually, it's not just the case that this policy of Western military intervention in the region doesn't work. The absolute crisis that exists in Iraq at the moment, that has given the opportunity for ISIS to spread in that country, is a direct consequence of the catastrophe of the occupation that the West was involved in 2003. So, you know, we are making the situation worse. We're causing the problem in the first place. The idea we should do more of the same is frankly ludicrous.
Well, let me dive in and put that to Dr Alan Mendoza. What's your view on that? We shouldn't carry on doing the same thing. According to Chris Nineham, it's caused horror for a number of people, hundreds of thousands of people across the region.
Well, this is a complete rewriting of history and indeed of reality. What you're getting is the view of a hardcore group of people called the Stop the War Coalition, who are just anti-action of any kind. They don't care for 1 minute that thousands are under the sway of ISIS now. They don't care that Yazidis, Christians, Muslims are being persecuted by this group. People are being killed on a daily basis, sex slaves taken, all of this. They're not interested in that. All they're interested in is in sitting at home doing nothing, and they think that they can avoid this threat because of it. Let me tell you, the spread of ISIS, the spread of terrorism, comes from ideology. ideology. It doesn't come from interventionism. It's a myth that foreign policy has caused this. This is down to a pernicious ideology which has spread and which has gone across the world and will continue to do so until we help our allies to defeat. And it's worth remembering we are in Iraq right now because the Iraqi government has invited us there. A Muslim government has invited us to help Muslim citizens and other citizens of Iraq and to defend them. That's why we're there. We're also there because we have a security problem here. We have a problem with ideology here that is caused by people, sadly some of our own citizens, going to join this conflict, to go and join fighting in Iraq and Syria, and who will export a threat back here. There's a very real reason we are there, and that's why we need to prosecute this war in a much more rigorous fashion, as the Defence Select Committee have discussed and released in their report, than has hitherto been done. And until we do that, we are not going to see a defeat here. We're in fact going to see ISIS increase its misery on the ground, increase its punishment for citizens on the ground, people there, and also an increased security threat to us here in Britain as well.
Well, clearly something that we're not going to get any agreement on this afternoon. No time to continue that discussion any further either, but we appreciate both your time. Dr Mendoza, thank you, and thank you to Chris Nynham.